Good evening, everyone. I hate to interrupt the energy and the joy that you can feel in this room from everybody being here, but we are going to get started. I love how happy everybody is. This really feels celebratory. Good evening. I am delighted to welcome you to this evening of celebration, an evening where we will recognize Brad Toben, the colleague of many of us, and the friend, a good friend to all of us. I admit it feels a little odd to be the one opening the program. Normally this is Brad's role to talk about the Baylor Lawyer of the Year, its history, and the criteria for this honor. For more than 60 years, the Baylor Law Alumni Association has selected one stellar lawyer to be the Baylor Lawyer of the Year. The honoree has earned this recognition because of his or her legal ability, their contribution to the legal profession, their standing in the profession, and because of his or her legal ability, the nominee must exhibit strong Christian character, and his or her civic, religious, and other attainments are considered in the selection process. And of course, the nominee must have demonstrated care and concern and active interest in the law school. This selection is not one to be taken lightly, because to be honest, Baylor lawyers, and as Brad would say, that's capital B, capital L, because Baylor Lawyer is a brand. Baylor lawyers are a special breed, and there are many who without question satisfy the criteria. It is no easy task to select just one, but it is a selection that the Alumni Association gets right every year. And I had no doubt that it would get it right this year. So it was my absolute pleasure, along with Senior Assistant Dean Angela Cruz-Turner, to shepherd Brad's nomination through the selection process. We started by reaching out to Baylor Law alums who have observed different aspects of Brad's career and asking them if they'd be willing to write a letter to the Law School Alumni Association supporting Brad's nomination. Almost everyone agreed enthusiastically to do so. There was that one email response we received from one individual who responded, "Big problem. He doesn't meet any of the criteria, but I'll search for something nice to say." Of course, we knew that response was tongue-in-cheek. Indeed, for many, the real challenge was fitting into one letter all that the writer wanted to say about Brad without writing a tome. I'm not going to read them all, but let me read a few representative samples from the letters supporting Brad's nomination. Dean Toben is truly an icon in law school academia and is responsible for turning out a multitude of outstanding lawyers who now practice throughout the United States and beyond, and who hold positions in the judiciary and the corporate world as well. Another wrote, "Dean Toben is the epitome of a Baylor lawyer. His life and career is one marked by dedication to faith, family, our profession, and Baylor law. It is hard to imagine someone any more deserving of the designation of Baylor Lawyer of the Year than Brad Toben." The shortest letter we received simply stated in its entirety, "Brad Toben deserves to be the Baylor Lawyer of the Century, or Baylor Lawyer of the Year at the very minimum. We all know him. We all know what he's accomplished. He's the best. He deserves every recognition possible. This is the easiest decision you'll ever make. I'm not going to waste anybody's time listing the reasons. They are obvious, or you've been living in another universe. Seriously, please give him this honor ASAP." Let me reiterate, the Baylor Law Alumni Association got it right. And then with the selection made came the fun part, plotting and scheming, the surprise announcement notifying Brad of his selection. Among Brad's many duties as Dean of the Law School, I think without a doubt, his planning the announcement, his planning of everything about the Baylor Lawyer of the Year was one of the things he enjoyed most. Last year, I got to experience firsthand the gleam in Brad's eyes as we conspired about how to surprise Michael High School, the most recent Baylor Lawyer of the Year before Brad. Brad was giddy with excitement as we schemed and plotted with Michael's wife Anita about how we would spring it on Michael and then carry through with the plan to near perfection. My colleagues and I wanted to do the same for Brad. Indeed, one individual who has been honored as the Baylor Lawyer of the Year challenged us, writing, "I hope your surprise announcement catches him as off guard as all of the rest of us he has surprised over the years. He deserves nothing less." So yes, there was much plotting and scheming on how to surprise Brad. I won't identify all the co-conspirators, and for those involved, you have the right to remain silent. But I think we pulled it off with an announcement in which everyone at the law school was able to participate. It might have involved Angela, me, and others at the law school deftly ignoring Brad's reminders that we needed to start thinking about the Baylor Lawyer of the Year. Usually not advisable to ignore your boss, but we did. But while we, the event planning team, may not have come up with the most creative name for our conspiratorial gang, we did develop a plan that was elegantly simple. The useful subterfuge of a group photo, something we hadn't done in years. Angela and I simply informed Brad of the date we would be taking the group photo of the faculty and the staff and told him he needed to be present. In truth, we could have taken the photo on any day without any concern for Brad's attire. Casual, or even business casual, is not a concept for the dean who wears a suit to work every day. However, someone, Beth Toben, made sure that his tie was particularly appropriate for the day of the photo. And so on the front steps of the Law Center, for which Brad was the driving force in willing it into existence, and in the presence of all our colleagues at the law school, and of course, Beth, Brad learned that this year the Alumni Association had selected him as Baylor Lawyer of the Year. There can be no doubt that Brad Toben unequivocally embodies the characteristics of one to be recognized as Baylor Lawyer of the Year, or even Baylor Lawyer of the Century. The average tenure of a law school dean is 4.1 years. Brad has served as the dean of the Baylor Law School for more than 31 years. During those 31 years, we knew these things to be true. That Brad was always guided by the best interests of the law school, that he would always lead with a steady hand no matter what challenges we might face. We knew that in discerning the best interests of the law school, Brad's care and concern for students would be first and foremost. We knew that Brad believes we are called to serve others, a message that he imparts to our students by his own example. Brad draws strengths from his close friends and, of course, his family, whom he loves deeply. We knew and continue to know that Brad is a man of abiding faith in God. If you are of a certain age, you may remember the phrase, "I am third," the title of the memoir by Gale Sayers, the great Chicago Bears running back. That phrase represents the basis for a faithful life. God is first, others are second, and we as people of faith should come third. This clearly describes the philosophy by which Brad leads his life. We are better for it. For the past 14 years, we have honored the Baylor Lawyer of the Year with a luncheon in their hometown. This allows the honoree to share Baylor Law's highest honor with their family, treasured colleagues, and close friends. That is exactly the group we have gathered for this evening. This will be a special evening, one where we share our appreciation and respect for Brad, and one where, just to be sure he remains humble, there's likely to be a bit of good-natured ribbing and roasting of Brad. Together, let us celebrate Dean Bradley J.B. Toben. Welcome. I would now like to invite the Honorable Judge Rodney Gilstrap, Chief United States District Judge for the Eastern District of Texas, to lead our invocation. Following the prayer, please enjoy your meal and the good company around you. We will continue the program in just a bit, but please feel free to continue eating as the program begins because we have a lot to squeeze into this evening of celebration. Thank you.
Would you bow with me, please? Our Father, we gather this evening to thank you for your good and faithful servant, Brad Toben. We thank you for allowing him to bless each of us through his service to you and through his service to the rule of law. We pray for your continued grace and blessings upon him, upon his wife Beth, and their family in the years to come. We thank you for those gathered here tonight, each one in their own way, engaged in that same venerable profession dedicated to the pursuit of justice. Please bless the food we're about to enjoy and watch over each one here as we return to our homes this evening. In Jesus' name, amen.
I really hate to ruin your dinner, but if we don't get started, we're never going to get out of here. And I don't know about you, but I would like to get out of here sometime tonight. So the first time I had a one-on-one conversation with Brad Toben, it was because I ran into him in a stairway at Indiana University Law School. And we stood there on that stairway and we talked for an hour. And I went home that night and I called my mother and I said, I think I just met a man who cares more about other people than he cares about himself. And my mother said, they don't make very many of those. You better hang on to that one. He's a rare one. My mother was a very wise woman. If you've ever had a conversation with Brad Toben, you know what I'm talking about because he genuinely cares about you and he genuinely cares about what's going on in your life, and he's going to ask you a lot of questions, and you are going to be the focus of that conversation. He is not going to be the focus of that conversation. So tonight, as we're all focused on him, I assure you he is feeling out of his element. And for the last 30 years, when the law schools had this event to recognize the Baylor lawyer, he's been the moderator of the event. He's been the one responsible for making sure the train runs on time. And I assure you tonight, he is feeling very out of control, and he is anxious because he is not up here at this microphone. So all I have to say is he is very well prepared for this because he is, in fact, a Baylor lawyer. He is, capital B, capital L, a Baylor lawyer, and he's trained for this because, after all, isn't that what we all felt like when we were in practice court? Out of control, anxious. That's the way we were trained. And don't worry, honey. You are going to get your turn. You're just last tonight. Your daughter, the softball pitcher, said to tell you that you are the relief pitcher tonight. Just sit back and enjoy the first part of the game. When Brad was selecting speakers for tonight, he asked me if I would share a few thoughts about his time as the dean from my perspective. At first, I was really hesitant because anybody that knows me knows that I often cry at events like this. And when I'm up at the front and my kids are out there, they're always looking at me waiting to see when's she gonna cry. And then they make fun of me when we go home and they tell me how embarrassed they are. And so I told Brad I wasn't gonna do this, and he said, well, if they get mad, this one's on me. So blame your dad, okay? My perspective on being named Baylor Lawyer of the Year. When Brad was nominated, Pat just told you the whole story of how they decided to honor him, but they had called me and said, how can we make it meaningful? And I said he would want to find out with the staff and the faculty because they are the people who make him look good. They are the people who make the law school run every day, and he would want to be with them. Later, he told me he absolutely had no idea what was going on when they lined up for that picture. He thought it was just a routine thing they were getting ready to do until Jordan Hanna handed a microphone to Pat Wilson. And he said all of a sudden he knew exactly what was going on, and he was just overwhelmed. So good job, you guys. You did get him. When we left the school that day, Pat handed him a folder with the letters that you all had written nominating him for this award. And that night when he was done with his chores, he sat down on the couch with that folder and a glass of wine, and I was sitting in the chair next to him, and I was kind of trying to pretend that I was just watching TV, but I was really watching him out of the corner of my eye. And he would grin, and sometimes he laughed, and he would chuckle, and a couple of times his eyes filled with tears, and he even finally cried. And that night, when we got to the bathroom, Richard Albert, yes, this is where all of our important conversations happen, in the bathroom when we're getting ready for bed at night, he looked at me and he said, I know this is so silly, but this award means so much to me. That's a Brad Toben word, silly. And he said, as I was reading the criteria for that award, I realized that is all I really ever wanted to be in life. I wanted to be that kind of Baylor lawyer. So simply put, so completely heartfelt. You have honored him in achieving exactly what he wanted to do, and you've told him he did it. And so, from my perspective, he has achieved everything he wanted to do, and you guys just affirmed him in it, and it means so much to him. Thank you. If anyone knows about his love for Baylor Law School, I would think that would probably be me. So this is my perspective on that love affair that he has with Baylor Law School. You see, 42 years ago, when he and I were talking about whether or not to get married, he said, there are 3 things you are going to have to do if you marry me. The first one is you're going to have to let me read whenever I want to and as much as I want to, because that's how I've gotten as far as I've gotten in my career at this young age. The second is you have to let me always have a dog, because I love dogs. And the third is you're going to have to move to Waco, Texas. And I said, where is Waco, Texas? And why would anybody want to move to Waco, Texas? And he said, well, that's where Baylor Law School is. And if I ever get the opportunity to have my dream job, I want to live in Waco, Texas and teach at Baylor University. Well, apparently the look on my face indicated that this might be a deal breaker. So he said, well, not right now. And he said, maybe 10 years from now. He said, we'll stay here in Indiana, which is where we were and where my family is. And he said, you can have your kids here and your sister's at OB/GYN, and she can help deliver. Your dad's a doctor. Your mom and dad can help us raise the kids. But when they're in elementary school, we'll have an adventure. We'll take an adventure. We'll go to Texas, and we'll just see what it's like. How about that? We wait 10 years. And I said, okay, I can handle the reading. You can have a dog outside. And I was thinking to myself, in 10 years, surely I can convince him that we don't need to move to Waco, Texas, that we can stay here in Indiana. But less than 10 months later, Dean McSwain called and said, Brad, I'm getting ready to retire from the deanship. And before I retire, I want to have you on the faculty here at Baylor Law School. And he said, I know Beth is from Indiana, and she's not going to like that. So he said, we're going to fly the 2 of you down here, and we're going to interview you, and we're going to try to convince her that she needs to move to Texas. So that's what they did. They flew us down here, and they sent me with Sherry Featherston to ride all around town, especially over at those gorgeous houses over by the lake, to show me houses that I was never going to be able to afford. And tell me how wonderful it is to live in Waco, Texas. And they took him to the law school and let him hang out with all of his buddies and see the changes that had happened since he was in school. And then we met up that night on the first floor of the Hilton in the restaurant downstairs. And he comes in and sits down at the table, and he's like this. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And I was like, it didn't matter what I think. This is a done deal. If I really love this man, I can't tell him he can't come here and have his dream job. I mean, what kind of fool would I be? I just started crying. I mean, there was no going back. I couldn't say no, and I knew we were never going back to Indiana. We were here, and we were in it for the long haul. And it wasn't so bad. It wasn't that I didn't want to do it. It just wasn't on my timetable. But it was God's plan, and it was on God's timetable. And it was the best thing that we ever did. So we went back to Indiana, finished up our obligations there, and on July 31st, 1983, we were in Waco, Texas. That was our one-year wedding anniversary, and we stayed at the Sandman Motel. Now, if you have not seen the Sandman Motel, I would encourage you to take a gander the next time you drive down Valley Mills Drive. It is the motel at the corner of Franklin and Valley Mills. It is still there. You can probably rent a room by the week. You can probably rent a room by the night. You can probably rent a room by the hour. And it was like that 40 years ago, the day that we moved to Waco. The cat sat in the windowsill and cried. I sat in the bathroom and cried. The sheets were wet, the room smelled, and I said, can we please not go to the Ramada Inn across the street and stay all night over there? And he said, Baylor University is paying for this room, and I will not abuse their generosity. And that is the God's honest truth of what happened. So several years ago, when they celebrated the 25th anniversary of the people the staff and the faculty who had been there 25 years, I told John Eddie that story, and John Eddie Williams shared it. And at the end of that story, John Eddie jokingly said to Brad, you've become very accustomed to Baylor University's generosity. Yeah, he has, John Eddie. He's become very accustomed to all of your generosity. And it is your generosity that has made his career so successful. And that is my next point, my perspective on the deanship. Many people have asked what I think Brad's legacy will be, or what I think he would want people to remember about his 31 years as dean. I think most people will assume that it will be the beautiful, we still call it, the new law center, this new law school, the Sheila and Walter Humphrey Law School. I think that's part of it, but I hope it's much more. It isn't just the magnificent building, but it's also the incredible program that is housed inside that building. In November of 1991, he was appointed dean. In the spring of 1992, one night he sat up on the side of the bed and he said so loud, "We are they." It woke me up. I said, "What? You're dreaming. Go back to sleep." And he said, "No, we are they." And I said, "Well, I don't know who they are, but we are going back to sleep." And he said, "No." And he got up and he started talking. He said, "The faculty and the staff keep saying, when are they going to do something about the new building? We need a new building. We have outgrown the facility. We can't add programs. We can't add staff. When are they going to do something about it?" And he goes, "I just realized I'm they. If we don't do something about this, nobody's going to do something about it. We're not going to get a new building." So he started traveling around Texas and talking to alumni about the fact that they needed a new building, a facility worthy of the programming that they wanted to have, and to be able to provide for the students the way that they wanted to. One day he came home with a kind of bewildered look on his face, and he told me that when he was on the Carmack at the airport, Walter Humphrey had pulled him aside and he said, "Toben, this is how this is going to go down. Sheila and I are going to give $10 million. John, Eddie, and Sheridan are going to give $5 million. Carol Ann and Harold Nix are going to give $5 million. And everybody else is going to line up and they're going to get it done." And he was kind of taken aback. And I'm not sure he really at that point believed it. But Walter was right. That is exactly what happened. I am so appreciative tonight that Sheila Humphrey is here with us and that John, Eddie, and Sheridan are sitting there right with us, because I personally have felt like the whole time we've been trying to serve 31 years, they have been right beside us, helping us, supporting us through. It was as if Walter and John Eddie pushed that first domino, though, and everything just started falling into place. Everybody did exactly what Walter said they would do. They started to give financially. They believed in the program and the plan. They gave their ideas. They gave their work ethic. Everybody stepped up to the plate, not just to build the building, but then to build the programming that they wanted inside, and that to build the scholarships and increase the endowment. Everybody did their part. When Brad had that epiphany moment, we are they, it wasn't just about the building, though. That kind of became his way of being the dean. It turned out to have a bigger meaning. He realized his job was to take your ideas. I mean, he had a few good ones along their way, but to take your ideas, your dreams, and to figure out a way to make them happen. And that's what his role was as the dean. So it's really your partnership that has made his career so successful. You and many others who are not with us tonight. So what do I hope his legacy will be? I hope it will include remembering when he is gone that you are they. And it's going to be up to you to keep Baylor Law School what Baylor Law School needs to be. And if you really want to honor his legacy, when you hear yourself say, when are they going to do something in whatever venue you may be, stop, pray, and ask God, am I they? That is what he would want you to do. So now my thanks. Thank you for loving Brad and supporting him so well and being his partner all these years. Thank you for loving our family along the way. John and Sarah Beth and I got to do so many things, go places, meet people, have experiences, vacations, games, so many things that we wouldn't have gotten if it wasn't for Brad's career. Tom and Cammie, his brother and sister-in-law, thank you for being here to represent the family. I promised them that I would tell you, Brad, if your parents were here, they would be so proud of you, and we know that to be true. Brad, thank you for ignoring my tears. Thank you for moving to Waco, Texas anyway, and joining this wonderful Baylor Law School family. It was one of the best decisions you've ever made, besides marrying me. And speaking of thanks, I want to thank everybody in this room who has driven Brad Toben around the state of Texas to keep him alive. I'll take the wheel from here. Jeremy?
Well, my name is Jeremy Counselor, and I've had the great fortune to serve on the Baylor Law School faculty under Brad Toben for 20 years. And in thinking about my remarks tonight, Brad, I looked over the criteria for becoming the Baylor Lawyer of the Year, and your Christian commitment, your professional achievement, your dedication to Baylor Law School, you don't just meet that criteria, you surpass it. As has been said, if there was a Baylor Lawyer of the Century Award, you would get it. So why spend time talking about why you are the Baylor Lawyer of the Year? I want to spend time talking about your attributes that did not contribute to you becoming the Baylor Lawyer of the Year. Here's one. Brad Toben loves to use big, fancy words. He uses big, fancy words like they're going out of style. And they have gone out of style. Most of them went out of style shortly after the fall of the Roman Empire. On one occasion, I had to go into Brad's office and ask him for money. It was for a program that the law school does. Nobody likes to go ask the dean for money. So I had a list of reasons why I thought this would be a judicious and wise use of resources. And before I even make the ask, I'm going through my rationale. And he stops me, he interrupts me, and he says, "What is the quantum?" What is a quantum? Are we talking protons and neutrons here? String theory? Ant-Man and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I looked it up. Quantum means amount. But why use amount when there's a word like quantum out there? Brad, one of the things that not everybody really appreciates is that Brad has spent 31 years managing law faculty. We are opinionated, we have big egos, deeply held convictions, and he can't fire any of us. So that can pose challenges. But Brad's got a big fancy word he busts out whenever we get a little out of hand. Here's how it happens. We'll be in a faculty meeting. One person is saying, this is what I think we ought to do. Somebody else is saying, this is what I think we ought to do. And sometimes our ideas are pretty crazy. And Brad will say, that is a decanal decision. The first time I heard him say that, I had just joined the law faculty. I had no idea what that meant. But it immediately brought the faculty to silence. And I thought, well, I better figure out what this word means. So I got out my dictionary, but it's not in this dictionary. So I got this dictionary, the Webster's Unabridged. Now, when I consult this dictionary, I'm thinking, he made this word up. But it turns out it's there. Decanal, pertaining to a dean or to a deanery. A deanery, of course, is where you store deans. So when he tells us that is a decanal decision, he's saying it's a decision that pertains to a dean. But there's a second definition in Webster's Unabridged Dictionary for decanal. There's a definition number 2, and I think this is the definition that really captures the meaning that Brad is after when he says to the faculty, this is a decanal decision. Decanal, definition number 2. This issue is none of your business. But Brad, decanal goes down a lot better, doesn't it? See? Okay, now we all know that Brad Toben, he is a dear friend to all of us in this room. He is such a devoted friend, a loyal friend. That's true, that's great. But I want to tell you, he will abandon you. He will drop you like a hot rock at the slightest suggestion that you might be an international terrorist. Let me explain. About 6 years ago, I am on a flight with Brad Toben and Brian Sayre. We are traveling to a Middle Eastern country. It's a 15-hour flight. 45 minutes into this flight, Brad is sitting right behind me. 45 minutes into this flight, a woman sitting about 3 seats away stands up. Nobody's supposed to be standing up at this point. She steps over 2 or 3 passengers to get into the aisle, and she announces that she knows the secret behind 9/11. This is true. She was there. She understands it all. This plane is going to be used in some sort of terrorist attack. And then she looks at me. She points at me, and she says, "You were there too. You know what's going on." It's funny now. But let me tell you, this is the God's honest truth. I was visually inspecting her for devices and wires. I had unbuckled my seatbelt. I had resolved, I am not going down without a fight. The flight attendants converge. They secure her. They call for restraints. They take her to a different compartment of the plane. the adrenaline is pumping. I am frightened. I am disconcerted. But my captain is there, right behind me. He's right behind me, my dean. And I turn around, and I don't remember what I said, if anything, but I know how I must have looked when I turned to Brad, and I said, and he is still looking at his book. Anytime he wants to, right? Anytime he wants. He is still looking at his book, and he looks up from the book, and he says, That's helpful. I kid you not, the title of the book, Quantum Physics. Why anyone would want to know about the amount of physics, I have no idea. So now I have 14 hours to think about the fact that we are going to land in a country that is an on-again, off-again ally of the United States, not renowned for its due process, that this country owns the airline we're on, employs the flight attendants who have just seen me be accused of being a 9/11 conspirator, and it is their passport control I've got to walk through. The moment finally arrives, I deplane. Brad is right behind me, he's on my hip, and we're heading to passport control, and the dour men in the white flowing robes who will decide my fate. And apparently, Brad Toben has also spotted the issue about the problems I may face at passport control, because as we get there, he goes all the way to the other end of the hall, to the line farthest away from me. And I'm looking over at him. I'm looking for a, it's gonna be okay, we'll get you out of here no matter what. But he doesn't make eye contact. And then when he gets through passport control, he doesn't even turn around and look at me. He pretends like he doesn't even know who I am. More on that story in a moment, but first I want to share with you another attribute that did not contribute to Brad being the Baylor Lawyer of the Year. And that is that he has absolutely no sense of direction whatsoever. None. About 3 months after I joined the faculty, Brad asked me to go with him from Waco to Dallas to attend the State Bar Convention. And so, not knowing any better at that time, I agreed to ride in a car with him. And so we met in the law school parking lot, got into the car, and off we go to Dallas. About 2 hours into the drive, he says, "My heavens, Jeremy, we're in Fort Worth." Now, that's no big deal. That's no big deal. Fort Worth is not a long way from Dallas. So when we got back to Waco, I was kind of telling some of our colleagues about this story. And in particular, I told Laura Obanoski. Where's Laura? Is she in here? I told Laura Obanoski this story. And I said, first, so I got into a car with Brad. She goes, "Don't ever do that again. You took your life into your own hands." And then when I got to the part of the story where Brad says, "My heavens, Jeremy, we're in Fort Worth," Laura says, "You're lucky he didn't say, 'My heavens, Jeremy, we're in Laredo.'" Now back to that Middle Eastern country. I made it through passport control, no thanks to Brad. And Brad and Brian and I decide we're going to take a tour that goes out into the desert. So we go out into the desert, we go to this oasis, palm trees in a sea of sand. And we see a falconry demonstration, and we get a little bit of history about the Bedouin people. And then at some point, Brad and I are traipsing through the sand towards the restrooms, and they have a really nice restroom facility out there. It looked new, nice facility, nice fixtures. The only thing odd about it was it didn't have a roof, but of course it never rains out there, so why bother with a roof? Now he's right next to me, and I get into the men's restroom, and all of a sudden he's not next to me anymore. And I think, well, that's no big deal. He probably stopped and talked to somebody, as Brad is wont to do. But about 30 seconds after I got into the men's restroom, I hear over the wall, on the other side of the wall, because there's no roof, I hear a woman, Brad, look up here. I hear a woman's voice in heavily accented English, and she says, "Sir, this is the women's restroom." And then I hear Brad Toben say, "My heavens, I'm in the women's restroom." So yes, Brad had wandered into the women's restroom despite the lack of urinals and the sign on the door in English that said women's restroom. He'd wandered into the women's restroom in a country that still routinely executes people with swords. And not only was he in the women's restroom, when that poor woman called him out, he was using the women's restroom. And he had not yet reached the quantum that would allow him to stop immediately. A few minutes later, I'm down at the bottom of this little hill. Brad comes out of the women's restroom. He walks towards me, and he goes, "Ah!" And I said, And I pretended not to know who he was. Do you know how Brad is a bit of a space invader? That when he talks to you, he puts his face right here, and you back away, but that face keeps coming. He's not trying to intimidate you. He's not even trying to make you feel uncomfortable. He just has no idea where he is. Well, Brad, I do have something serious I want to tell you. You richly deserve this. I mean, I couldn't say it better than if there was a Baylor Lawyer of the Century, you should get it. It's hard to go without saying, though, that it comes at a time when you're stepping down as dean after 31 years, not retiring. We've got a full load of writing classes for you to teach in the fall. So don't worry about that. You're not retiring. It's wall-to-wall writing classes for you. So no worry about the retirement part. But, you know, I've had recently some alums ask me, just sort of marveling, how does somebody serve as a dean for 31 years? Because that's a really hard thing to do. Deans don't last that long, especially not law deans. And they've sort of asked variations on the question, how did he do it? And, you know, things like he's really hardworking, and that's true. And you've got incredible energy, and you're devoted to this place. But if somebody asked me to say why you've been such a great dean for all these years, and I can only give one reason, I would say it's because he's a really good person. He's just a really good person. And I think that's a result of your Christian faith, and I think it affects how you treat everyone and how good a job we want to do for you. And so we're so privileged to be your friend, Brad. You make us want to make this place even better than it already is, and so grateful. And I want to say, Beth Toben, you're a dear friend of mine, and Sarah Beth and John. Brad would be the first one to say you were the ones behind him the whole way, that he couldn't have done any of this without you. But I want to thank you all for sharing him with us and for giving us the privilege of working with him all these years. Thank you, Brad, and congratulations to you. And now it is my privilege to introduce to you the Professor Emeritus, former practice court director, and the 2021 Baylor Lawyer of the Year, Gerald Powell.
Brad, do you need his dictionary? Oh, Brad. Oh, my goodness. So I'm retired now, and I'm really no longer a lawyer. I'm actually tonight more of a scientist, I think. Maybe you'll see what I mean. I'm actually one of a handful of people in this room who have known Brad longer than Beth has. According to the data, I've known him 17,791 days. You too, Spike. You too, Randy. Or 48 years, 8 months, and 17 days. Now, that's longer than Beth. It's longer than Beth by 2,548 days, or 7 years, 8 months, and 8 days. Brad and I were in law school together. That's our practice court class, the second image down there. We were on the law review staff together. That first image there. Now, of course, we were both very, very young then. I know at least I probably appeared back then much different than I do today. Or not. But in law school, Brad had two remarkable, quantifiable, scientifically, qualities. He was exceedingly smart, as measured by grading criteria, and he had prodigious hair, as measured by contemporary imaging. Well, not to jump ahead too much, but scientists believe that those two are related in ways that's of interest to all of us. Come to that. First, you've got to understand that Baylor University, in its role as a leading R1 research institute, has launched some fascinating research into the question of what explains Brad's long success and tenure. I've been privileged to be a part of that study, conducting a little field work to determine if we could falsify the laboratory data. You see, as Pat suggested, quantitative studies have proved him to be the second longest serving dean in the history of American law schools. According to Rosenblatt's Dean's Database, the average tenure is 4.6 years. The median tenure is 3.88, and Brad, of course, is at 31. But field work, right, might disprove the efficacy of such a long tenure. There's the inquiry. And we, of course, immediately set about to falsify the dean in a scientific sort of way. Any good scientist will tell you that the observation of phenomenon in nature is what science is really all about, isn't it? Well, early behavioral evidence suggested that there was a possible flaw in Brad's internal timing mechanism. And extensive work by Professor David Gwynn quantified that phenomenon as the truth. He spoke entirely too long. Well, since Brad was at the wheel of the law school, I had many opportunities to conduct my field study of him when he was behind the wheel of a car on a road trip, much as Jeremy experienced. And as Jeremy observed, there's one thing about Brad: he's very chatty. And when you're in a car alone with him, there's a lot of time for chatting. And as Jeremy observed, he falls into a subclassification of chatters that is known in science as proximate facial chatters, or PFCs. In fact, the standard driving posture for Brad Toben was like this. Well, since every destination, every time we lived, I concluded that we were unable to falsify decanal efficacy by this data, and so we moved on to the next study. Although Brad was one time that I recall when the data was ambiguous, would you say? So we're coming back from Dallas. Brad is driving. He is chatting facially, and I am sitting in the passenger seat, gripping it tightly, when all of a sudden, on the road ahead on Interstate 35, a tire comes tumbling down the middle of the interstate straight for us. And Brad says, "Oh my goodness, there's a tire." Well, we lived. Our studies of Brad while driving occurred not only when the vehicle was in motion, though, it also came when we stopped. So we'd been to Dallas, of course, for another law school trip, and once again, Brad's rented a car. It's late at night. We are driving home. It's dark as pitch. We are on I-35 somewhere between Waxahachie and East Jesus. And then suddenly, the car slows down unexpectedly. Oh my goodness, we're out of gas. Well, we cruise over onto the shoulder. The car slows down, and we get to the shoulder, and it's dark as pitch. 18-wheelers are going past us, 90 to nothing, going south. All we see is headlights and then taillights. The car, our little compact that we save Baylor money with, is going back and forth like this. So we escape to the grassy knoll above. We get up there. It's dark as pitch. And we are so far into the wilderness that there is not even a frontage road. I pull out my trusty GPS on my phone. The nearest civilization is 10 miles away. So what in the world are we going to do? Brad has failed to check the gas gauge, but that doesn't help us to assign the blame now, does it? What are we going to do? Eventually, we figure out that we might call roadside assistance, and we do, and eventually, it's late at night and we're headed home, eventually a police officer from Waxahachie arrives and saves us. We lived. He just happened to have a personal connection with the Toben family, as it turns out. More about that later. Well, our study progressed not only when the car was stopped, but also when we tried to get it started again. So the next time we went out, we decided we would get gasoline at a gas station before we got on the highway. And so we got there, and being the good friend, I got out and pumped the gas. Brad was inside. He had decanal work to do. I finished pumping the gas, get back inside. He's ready to start the car. Oh my heavens, I don't know how to start it. Well, the data did not really support a debilitating stroke. Actually, it appeared that unlike his two ancient Dodge Chargers, this car didn't have a key. So eventually we figured out that if we Googled it, we would find an owner's manual online, and we did, and we got it started. Oh my heavens, that's what that button was for. So we've had many times together. Many in this room have had times like that. We have all lived through it, and so we must conclude, I think, in a scientific sort of way, that the data does not falsify the dean's success over that 31-year period. Well, let me abstract for you now the primary findings on Brad's success as a dean of the research. It's confirmed in both the field evidence and in the laboratory. One finding relates to his brain, what he knows and understands, and the other, represented by his prodigious hair, relates to his person, what he feels about his work. Consider for a moment the first finding. Computed axial tomography has confirmed that his enormous brain both knows and understands what we are about. He understands that a professional school like ours has one overarching mission: teaching our students to be lawyers. He said it again last night at the reception. Teaching is number one. It's about our students. It's just about our students. Now, he understands that diversity is important, not just diversity in demographics, but he understands diversity in approaches to making lawyers out of them. He recognizes that we're different from other law schools and their methods. The old law school model, the one set by the Harvards and the Yales in the 19th century, placed the primary focus on faculty, not students, on scholarship, not teaching, the tail wagging the dog of legal education. But don't misunderstand me. Brad has known all along that legal scholarship is hugely important to American jurisprudence. While good science discovers the shape of the world, good legal scholarship shapes the world. It changes people's lives for the better. Our little old law school has a mighty big footprint, always exceeding its size. Because Brad has led us to make our own mark and not somebody else's, Under Brad's leadership, our scholars like Beth Miller and Tom Featherston and Luke Meyer have become leading authorities in their own fields. At the same time, Jim Wren and Liz Fraley and Jeremy Counselor and Robert Little in that magnificent practice court program is surging ahead with both experiential and doctrinal methodologies. It's still rigorous. It's still the thing that defines us as a law school, and it's consistently ranked in the top 2 or 3 in the nation in trial advocacy. And each of you, Baylor lawyers, are scientific evidence. You are proof of the efficacy of that mission. And you got it straight from the brain of Brad Toben. The second finding in the scientific inquiry, again confirmed by computed axial tomography, is that Brad has a big heart. He just has a big heart, and it's in precisely the right place. Except for those portions of it that are reserved for his family, the rest of it is devoted to everybody else. He is a true servant in that sense, always trying to help others, and that's, of course, informed by his faith. You can see evidence of it in everything that he's done in his 31 years. Maybe taking time to chat with a student passing in the hallway, jotting a note of congratulations to a newly appointed judge, or it may be something like inviting law school housekeeping staff to a Christmas party, driving hours on end to the funeral of an alum, or comforting the widow. It's the Toben touch. It's personal. It's about relationships. Yes, sometimes it feels close, but that's because Brad is close. He's close to us. Maybe we haven't always agreed with a turn in the road that he's taken us on, but we always reach the destination because we all agree as to where we're headed, and Brad has led us there. Each of you has felt the Toben touch, or you wouldn't be here tonight, would you? If you're proud of Baylor Law School, and I surely am, then you are proud of Brad Toben, and I know you are. I'm very proud, my old and good friend. I'm grateful. God bless you for the good that you have done to all the people that you have worked with, and to all the people that they have labored for, and in all the ways that you did it. God bless you, Brad. You have been a true gift to this university and well deserving of this honor. Congratulations.
Evening, everyone. I'm Christine Novak. I'm the current president of the Baylor Law Alumni Association and also the United States Magistrate Judge for the Eastern District of Texas Sherman Division. I had the privilege of serving on the committee which helped select this year's Baylor Lawyer of the Year. And so without further ado, I'd like to invite our award recipient to join me on the stage. Dean Toben, presented by the Baylor Law Alumni Association to both Dean and Professor Bradley J.B. Toben in recognition of his commitment to excellence in legal education, his lifelong service to the legal profession and community, and his commitment and deep love for Baylor law, his family, and most importantly, God. He will always be remembered as the utmost exemplar of the aims and ideals of Baylor Law School.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Wow, I've been overcome by everything that has unfolded the last 2 days, the reception last evening, and this wonderful gathering tonight. I am overcome by it, and I told Beth this morning, I don't know how I can thank everyone or even begin to take some feeble steps to thank everyone. This is the stuff of which lifetime memory is made, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But for now, Jeremy, thank you, Jeremy. You left out an important fact about that flight. You're very accurate. It was a scary moment as that woman was threatening you. What you left out was that we came on the plane together and there were 2 seats. And I said, Jeremy, you pick whichever one you want. And what occurred in that women's restroom in an Islamic country, what I was doing in there was could have been, well, the penultimate thing I did in my life before I faced the man with the sword. And Jerry, like Jeremy, like Brian last night, Brian had beautiful remarks at the reception last evening. Jerry and I, we've been friends for such a long time, and I cherish each of these colleagues who have spoken this evening. I cherish them. They are true exemplars of what makes Baylor Law great. Jerry has hit me in a weak spot on the driving business, and he was very kind, though. We did run out of gas, and what he did not share with you, and my family and my friends know, my heavens, my dear friend Mark Parker has rescued me many times, is that I have a congenital problem with looking at the dashboard gas gauge, so much so that there's seldom a calendar year that goes by that I don't run out of gas 4 or 5 times. So much so that each of our cars has a gas can. It's empty, but it has a gas can and a funnel in the trunk. And that has served me well. Jerry and I, we can share freely. And like last evening with Brian's remarks, Brian and I often disagree, but we love each other, and we always come to a good end. Jerry, some years ago, vehemently disagreed with a decision that I had made at the law school. He was trying to, being the master trial lawyer, master teacher that he is, he was trying to dissuade me of the error of my ways. And one morning I opened up my email, and it had on the subject line something to the effect of, "You are an idiot." Part 1. And he went on to explain why. And then a couple days later, not the next day, but just a couple days later, randomly, I opened up my email. You are an idiot. Part 2. And it went up through Part 4. And I told Jerry, I said, Jerry, I felt like a prisoner in the Bastille. You know, the French always told their prisoners that you will lose your head at dawn. They just never told you which dawn you would lose it on. But Jerry, Jeremy, Brian, thank you so much. Thank you, your dear friends and your superb teachers and your wonderful, exemplary Baylor lawyers. I want to very quickly thank some others, and then I want to tell you what this all means to me and why we're here. I want to thank Julie Corley, who is what I call the poobah of all things, Baylor Lawyer of the Year. It is a tremendous team effort. I've seen it now for over 30 years to bring everything together for the honoree, and many others are involved, and I'm going to be thanking them all, but Julie is the poobah. And then also, I want to give a shout out to my assistant of 30 years, and that's Laura Abanoski. Laura. Beth directed Laura to me, and I didn't care for Laura at all at first. She was very directive, and I was not used to having someone so bossy right outside my office. But we got to know one another, and then we got to love one another. So thank you, Laura. And I could go on with a long list, but I do want to start with that. But really, the most important thing I want to start with, and it's already been mentioned, of course, is my family, Beth, my precious Beth, and John, and Sarah Beth, and of course, Sarah Beth's fiance, Matt, my brother Tom, and my sister-in-law, Cammie. You have been wonderful supports, and I love each of you to the depths of the ocean and the heights of the sky. Thank you each so much. Thank you for all you have done. Everything we do, we have been as a team. We have done as a team. I thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, first. It's always first priority in my life, my family, and then Baylor and President Livingstone and Brad. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I'm going to confess, I always say my next priority is Baylor, but especially Baylor Law School. Beth was right in her remarks. I was absolutely like a kid at Christmas, on Christmas morning, when the spring of 1983 rolled around, and Beth and I came down here, and Dean McSwain, who's one of my heroes, offered me a job, and we met that evening in the lounge, and I was flying 3 feet off the ground that evening, and Beth was crying, and the server came over a couple times and put more napkins on the table, and I know she thought, he is such a cad, and he is dumping her. But I didn't, and I've had the miraculous 42 years since then. What she didn't tell you is that when I asked Beth to marry me, I was a little less than completely forthcoming. It was the spring of 1982, 1 year earlier, and even though I told her that someday we'll move to Baylor and to Waco 10 years from now, actually that year before, a full year, Dean McSwain had called me then and asked me if I wanted to come and interview, and I just didn't tell her that because it sounded all too immediate, but but I was glad that I asked Beth to marry me, and I was glad that I made that call on the matter of Baylor and coming here to what has unfolded before us as a wonderful life of delight in being at Baylor and Baylor Law School. When I was a kid when I came to the school. I was absolutely transformed intellectually, maturationally, and likewise when I went through Baylor Law School. When I was a kid, I raced through school. I was a dweeb. I just loved to read, and dweeb would be the proper adjective for it. I skipped a grade in elementary school, and then I got to college. I went through college in 2.5 years, and that's not because I'm smart. It's just because I took heavy loads, and I wanted to get on through. And I finally ended up, I was just past my 20th birthday, and I was going to be graduating from college at December, mid-year. And I didn't want to wait until the following August to start law school. And God leads us around corners, and I was waiting in an elevator on the campus of St. Louis, the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and I saw this purple mimeograph announcement on the tack board, and I just looked at it, and it said classes start in February, May, and August, and I didn't know where Baylor was at that point, except for the fact it had 1400 South 5th Street on the bottom, and I looked at that, and I just took the tack out, and I stole it, and I took it home, and I wrote away, and I got an application form. I sent it away, and I got accepted. And then I came in February of 1975 to Baylor Law School, sight unseen. I had never been to Waco. I arrived here on a Sunday, and classes began on Monday. There were no orientations then. And what began that Monday when I first arrived was the transformation. I fell in love with what I saw at Baylor Law School. I made lifelong friends at Baylor Law School. I'm looking out here. I was 20 years old, just past 20. I made friends, and two of them tonight, Randall Fields, raise your hand, Randy, and Spike Patillo, and Spike Patillo's wife, Sherry, is here. Spike and Sherry and Randy and Nancy and Danny Ducote and his wife Maida, who could not be here. They raised me. They were all somewhat non-traditional students. They had been out in the world. They had been around the block. I hadn't been. I was just a kid. And they took me into their homes. They made sure that I got my meals. They invited me over. They helped me get my clothes when I needed to buy clothes. I would talk to Maida about what should I buy anyway? What should I do? What kind of shirt do I wear? They were just like the dearest friends you could hope for, and lifelong moms as well. So thank you so much. And that is illustrative of the impact that going through the program was for me. It changed me. I saw some men in front of the classroom and in the courtroom going through those 3 years. And I said, I want to be like them. I want to be like them. One was Dean McSwain, that is to say, Dean McSwain. Such a gentle man, such a gentle man. So compassionate, so kind. I wanted to be like that. David Gwynn, the very first day of school is February 24th, 1975. I saw this slender, tall, erect man walking down the hallway, and I said, who is that? I sensed that he was a faculty member, and I had an upper class person say to me, oh, that's King David. That's King David. He's hell on wheels. And just wait until you see in the classroom. And David Gwynn, it was his 36th birthday. And of course, we lost him just the other year. He was at Baylor Law School for 54 years. I wanted to be like David Gwynn. I took every class that he offered, 4 or 5 of them, because I just admired what that man was doing up on the platform and how he was changing my brain about how I saw the world, about how I approached problems. He was indeed King David. He was regal in his posture and in his walk. He was remarkable, and I wanted to be like him. And then Matt Dawson, Mad Dog Dawson. He was so scary. He was just such a scary man. But was he ever brilliant in the courtroom? Wow, he got that Mad Dog moniker for a reason, because he was a mad dog in the courtroom. He represented his clients to the very nth of his ability, and his ability was absolutely gargantuan. These men, they cared for their students. They showed compassion for their students. Compassion, not Matt. But Dean McSwain and David, my heavens, they could take you aside if they knew that you were having any type of problem or challenge or you didn't understand, and they really cared that you would understand the material. They reached out and they wanted to make a difference. That was 1983 and the years that followed. In 1991, I'm going to jump ahead here. It was a hot July day. I had been on the faculty for 8 years, and I was at my desk, and I got a call from President Reynolds, from Dr. Reynolds. And it was kind of scary to take a call from Dr. Reynolds. I so admired that man, but he had this basso profondo voice, and he sounded like the voice of God on the other end. And he was calling me to tell me that the appointment was complete, that I would be the dean of the law school. And I was something washed over me at that moment. And I was 36 years old then. I was too young for the job. That's just the bottom line. I was too young. And I said to Dr. Reynolds that I felt as though I felt young. I wasn't sure whether I was necessarily the person who would normally be selected for the position. But Dr. Reynolds paused and he said, Brad, he said, I don't look at age. I don't look at years. I look at characteristics. I look at someone's heart. I look at their personal attributes. I look at their maturity. And then Dr. Reynolds was always known for his prescience. He always was a future looker. He could look down the line. And amazingly, in that phone call, after he had shared that with me, he said, Brad, he said, we may be looking here at a 20 or 30-year deanship. And I kind of like that. But I look back on it, and Beth and I, we had prayed about this. And we actually, just between us, we had decided we'll try this for 3 years. Let's try it for 3 years. And then God honored, I guess, our willingness to step forward at that point. And it's been 31 years now, tenfold those 3 years that we decided we'd give it a try. And the 31 years for whatever has been accomplished, and it's all been accomplished as a team, I want to give honor to President Reynolds for having trust in someone who was too young to do the job back then. He trusted me, and I always will remember and I'll always honor the memory of President Reynolds. When I joined the law school, it was building upon my experience as a student, and I love Baylor because of what it had done for me. I love Baylor Law School because of a personal reason. I wanted to experience what I had already experienced, except as a faculty member, being like those men that I admired. But as I was on the faculty for a longer time, I began to realize so clearly that, wow, this place is different. I was active in legal education, in the ABA, the ALS. I, of course, spoke regularly with deans across the country. And I began to realize that this school is not simply distinctive. This school is unique, and that's a word I very seldom use. I don't use the word unique, but I'm going to use it in speaking of Baylor Law School. It's unique because, Jerry, we put our students first. We're about teaching, and scholarship is important, but those students in the hallways, in the classrooms, and in the courtrooms, they're number one, and that is why Baylor is a great institution and why we are in so many ways unique. We are unique because we have a strong, powerful emphasis on service. We always tell our students, you're bright, you work hard, but that's not what it's all about. There are lots of folks that are bright, work hard at their work. You are being given an experience, you're being given insight to a set of talents and You're being given the opportunity to develop your natural gifts so you can move out and you can really make a difference in the lives of people. You're given a privilege by the state, shared by few, that gives you the ability and the obligation to reach out and touch people's lives and really change people's lives. You always want to recognize that that person that you're talking to across the desk or that person that you're sitting down to is burdened. They may be burdened by some legal issue. Their liberty may be at stake. They may be losing their family. They may be starting a business that they're investing their entire life savings in. But they have a problem that they can't solve themselves. They can't get from where they are to where they need to be. And you're going to be the bridge. And you need to take that seriously. We teach our students to become lawyers. The law is fascinating academically. Oh my heavens, I could read law, just read it, and never end. It's so fascinating academically, but it doesn't end there. It has to end by being put to the purposes of making a difference in the lives of other people. And those things that I've just mentioned, that emphasis upon our teachers, or on our teaching, the recognition that this is a practical profession, and we have to have the tools and the willingness to reach out and serve, and the recognition that we can make a difference in the lives of others by what we do at Baylor Law School, going out into the profession. Those are things that are unique about Baylor Law School. They're not shared by so many other law schools. They're simply not shared. In Scripture, in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, there's the beautiful passage by Paul in which he talks about the body of Christ. He uses the parts of the body as illustrations, and his point is that every part of the body is essential and relies upon every other part. All the parts together create the person, and without all together, you do not have the body. And I often look at Baylor lawyers, this web, this network across the state and the nation of what you have done every day and what you continue to do. You are an illustration of Paul's body of Christ analogy through your service as Baylor lawyers. In 1 Peter, Peter talks about living stones, that we are to be living stones as believers. And Peter, of course, was speaking to a first century audience. And speaking to that first century audience, his audience would understand that stones were used to build buildings. And only when the stones were gathered and they were brought together and they were mortared together could there be an edifice, could there be a building, could there be an accomplishment for the benefit of the community. And in the same way, I hope that all Baylor lawyers as believers, that we recognize that we are really those living stones that Peter spoke of 2,000 years ago. I believe that you are. I know that you are. And Beth was spot on about that they thing. We are all prone, because we are human, to sometimes complain about this or that or whatnot, and we always use that pronoun they. Why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? And the name they is just that. It's anonymous. It's they. It's never specified. They. And the things that have made, the attributes that have made Baylor Law School so distinctive that I have noted, those will be preserved only if we all, Baylor lawyers, and everyone who cares about Baylor law, only if everyone who cares about Baylor law realizes that you are they. You are they. As we go forward into the decades ahead, as we go forward into the years ahead, as we go forward in this period of transition, and Pat, you're going to do one whale of a job, as we go forward into this period of transition, let's remember that each of us is they. That means it's our personal responsibility in our capacity, in our relationship with Baylor Law School, whether it's faculty or staff partners, whether it's alumni, university officers, everyone has to be they in preserving what has made this wonderful school what it is today and so unique. And with that, I will end, but I want to end by saying everything I have shared over the past weeks, past few months, you've sent so many emails and texts and cards and letters, and I feel bad because I make a big deal out of responding to everything that I receive by way of communication, and I haven't been able to do that, but I'm going to yet. You're going to get my personal thanks, and the reason I want to emphasize that is because it's so important that we all be persons of gratitude. I get up every morning on my vanity. I have a sign that says, "Be grateful, be grateful." I am so grateful that I had the experience of Baylor Law School. I am so grateful to be a Baylor lawyer. I'm so grateful to be that kind of lawyer, capital B, capital L. You better continue it after I am no longer. I want to hear that. I want to hear that, capital B, capital L, because it's not just a descriptor. It is indeed, it's a brand, and it is a unique brand. Thank you for this honor. This honor means a lot to me. You perhaps could look and say, well, he's been at the law school for 40 years. He's moderated these programs for 30 plus years. This must seem kind of everyday to him. No, it's not. As Beth said, if you look at the criteria of selection for the Baylor lawyer, and I don't want this to be perceived in any way as immodesty, but I used to look at those criteria and I used to think, I wish I could be that type of Baylor lawyer. I wish I could be that type of Baylor lawyer who fulfills those criteria. The honor is deeply meaningful to me, and you have my forever and undying gratitude. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Just a quick toast to Brad, but I want to reflect on what has been the secret to his success. And I've thought about it, and Jerry touched on it a little bit, and others. But I think that I'm going to suggest to you that perhaps the secret to his success is his incredible ability to build relationships. And that he's built relationships with so many people. And how has he done it? Because he cares about you. He listens to you. He is humble, and he puts you first. And building relationships is how he has herded all these cats at the law school, and how he's been successful for 31 years, how he has convinced Walter Humphrey and Sheila Humphrey to build the magnificent building they built, because he cares. And you're here because he has built a relationship with you. And think about that. You have a relationship with Brad. He has gone out of his way to build that relationship with each and every one of us. Thank you, Brad, and I toast you. Sheila?
Silver-tongued devil, you. Those were quite interesting words there. I do have to say one thing, though, not to be repetitive, but there were several times when Sheridan and I were coming to the law school to put in some of the drapes and the furniture and making sure everything got put in properly like we had it all planned. And Brad would offer to pick us up at the airport. Well, the first time we got in the car, we both sat in the back, and Brad spent the entire time like this. talking to us. And Sheridan went, oh my God, you know, are we going to make it? But it never changed. It kept, every time he picked us up, it was still, how are y'all doing back there? Yeah. So I have to say that one little thing that was you did that for us, Brad, thank you. But I do want to join John Eddie and say, Brad, I think you were I know you were, the best dean that the law school could have ever had. And we want everyone to lift your glasses and toast the best dean ever. Hip, hip, hooray. Bradley. Cheers. Thank you all. Thank you, John Eddie.
Wow, what a wonderful evening. And Brad, you mentioned how grateful you are. We are so very grateful for you. As we close the formal part of our program and prepare to adjourn, I'd like to recognize the Baylor Lawyers of the Year that have been recognized in the past, those who are in attendance tonight. So if you are here and you've been honored as a Baylor Lawyer of the Year, please stand. Is it any wonder that Baylor has such a rich tradition of excellence, service, and commitment to the law school? Thank you all for being part of the celebration. Let me encourage you to join John Eddie and Sheila, who will be in the Oak Room to continue the celebration. Drinks are on the house. And before we finally close the night, I would like to invite, at the special request of Brad, the Honorable Judge Ed Kincaid, District Judge for the Northern District of Texas, to lead us in singing that good old Baylor line.
I wanted to sing a Rolling Stone song. But Brad and my wife said no. So let's all get her paws up here. That good old Baylor line, that good old Baylor line will march forever down the years as long as stars shall shine. We'll fling our green and gold afar to light the ways of time and guide us as we onward go. That good old Baylor line. Sing 'em, Bears! Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. And again, if you can join us, please stick around, continue the celebration.